a little over a decade ago, actually go back to 2010, now 15 years ago, I was in a transition in my own personal meditation practice that many people go through, where you kind of have been on an arc of transcendence, trying to let go, transcend, let go, let go, let go. Not this, I'm not this, not this. And at some point, if you transcend everything, you eventually realize, well, what is there left? Well, this is what's left. Life is what's left. Um, and I was at that phase where felt like I kind of had to take a turn back toward my life and away from trying to transcend things and suffering. And part of that journey was going back into the body, like learning how to actually inhabit my body and be in the body. And so there was this period of years where I was figuring out really how to do that. And it wasn't like any other problem I'd ever solved, which I'd always use my mind for. This was like I had to listen to my body and trust that it knew better than I did, quote unquote, me, my thinking mind. And sort of over time, I gradually learned sort of how to do that. And what was interesting is at the same time, I was very interested in what one of my earliest teachers, Daniel Ingram, was doing with the whole Kasina practice. Kasina, for those that aren't familiar, is a Buddhist meditation object. It's a visual object. Usually it's just a circle or an orb. And your basic instructions are to look at the orb and pour all of your attention into that one point to develop single pointed concentration on a visual object. And I thought that was really fascinating. And the things that he was sharing about meditating on a candle flame and the kinds of altered states he was getting in, especially on long retreats, were just kind of mind blowing. Like, oh, that sounds super cool. Although I was a parent at the time and didn't have time to go on long retreats, I was able to pull out my iPhone and mock up a little blue circle and put it on a black background. And then at night, I would pull this thing out and I'd sit it on a table in front of me, and everything's pitch dark. My wife's asleep, and I just sit there and stare at this orb. It's just like this floating orb in the darkness. It was really cool. I really enjoyed the practice. I explored it a lot, but I had trouble integrating the work of embodiment with this sort of visual meditation object. It felt like there were two very different directions. And every time I did the Kasina practice, while I enjoyed it and I found it interesting and I learned a lot, I felt like I was taken right out of my body the moment I started looking at the screen. It's like, oh, yeah, well, I guess I've been training to do that for quite a while. That's what happens in that practice for me. Is I tend to get pulled out of my own body because of the habitual tendency to do that. And I realized, like, I want to continue doing this, but I'd love to integrate it with the embodiment work. The visual is so cool. I mean, there's something about a visual object for many people that's extremely captivating. So to combine that with the physical process of breathing, I thought would be really good. And so at that time, I started to conceive of this idea of a breath Kasina, of a different kind of digital meditation object that would be synchronized with your breath. Now, I'm sure you all have seen online on social media or different places, you'll see these sort of GIFs, these animated images of a kind of circle that's expanding and contracting. And it might be doing some kind of like yogic box breathing, timing, or doing something that basically invites you to synchronize your breath with the object. This is very different. What I'm trying to do with the breath Kasina is really more of a mirror of your own breath, rather than what I've seen in the breath tech market, which is primarily technologies that are there to help you breathe in some kind of top-down way. Like, okay, this is the best way to breathe. Now, for me, having gone through all that work, right, of embodiment, of learning how to be in my body and trust my body, I don't want to build something like that because I don't know how the fuck people should breathe. Like, come on. But I do know that when you get to see your breath in front of you as a visual object, that there's a way in which it can help you synchronize your attention or your awareness on both the somatic experience, the experience of the body, the soma, and the visual or the sight sense. And part of the theory with the breath kasina, in a way, is that we're building embodied concentration with this object. Now, the breath does that as well, but I think adding the visual helps to kind of, again, it helps to deepen that because we're engaging the visual sense, which is quite active in humans. And it's also really powerful because we're working on integrating the sense fields in our experience. And one way I've come to understand the whole Buddhist awakening trip is that a lot of it is about first deconstructing the sense of identity where it's being centralized anywhere in your sensory field. You know, the idea that like I'm based here behind my head or my eyes or wherever, like you see through that because that's just a momentary arising and passing, um, which is very cool. But then once you've seen through everything and all the senses just continue to operate just like normal, you continue seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking, the six senses described in the Buddhist tradition. Um, then the real work becomes figuring out how to bring these things together, you know, how to actually uh, experience your whole field as it is. You know, this is embodiment. It's like you can wake up to the reality that you are not anything in the field, but you can also live into the reality of being the field. This is the difference. And I think this breath kasina practice could be helpful in some parts, in some ways, for that integration work. It's not just for that, but maybe a unique characteristic of it is that. Okay, that's kind of my story. That's how I came to create this. And within about a month of working on this project, I was able to get something working, and I was kind of surprised by that. So I ordered this. I'll show you this breath sensor here. This is just it's an academic company that makes breaths, you know, makes sensors for like academic institutions. It's pretty small. It's got this little thing that fits around your either your chest or your stomach. One thing I found on out pretty early is it's really important to position this thing where you want to feel your breath. So for me, I like putting it on my lower belly. And the idea is you put this on and you kind of strap it to you like a seatbelt, pull it tight, tight enough that it can measure the force of your breathing. What it's really measuring is force in newtons, mass times acceleration for those that remember their high school physics. And it's just looking at the force of breath. And it takes that real time data and it just feeds it, in this case, through Bluetooth into the application. What I'm going to do is just in a moment demonstrate the app, show you what it looks like. And in order to kind of help you understand kind of the process of what I'm going through, I'm gonna do some out loud noting while I demonstrate it, so you can hear my breathing. I'll note it out loud and kind of know where I am in the breath cycle. So you're not just looking at this orb that's expanding and contracting on the screen. All right, so I'm gonna go into the breath mode here. This Kasina.app, if you don't already know, it is available. The visual aspect of this I already released as a freemium app. So you could go to Kasina.app and use this now. The breath part I'm still working on releasing. So first step, you got to connect the belt. I got this belt because it's one of the few that uses Bluetooth. Figured that'd be nice to not have to plug in. Here we're just going to pair the Bluetooth and then move into selecting our Kasina. I'm starting here with just the colors. So in the traditional Buddhist frame, there's 4 colors that are used as objects of meditation. There's the red, blue, white, and yellow kasinas. And then here I've also added an additional one, which is the custom color kasina. So basically you can pick any color. I'm going to first start by showing you just the blue kasina. And you'll see here begins to expand and contract with the breath already. And I'll just meditate for a minute here on the default settings. You can see in, out, in, out, in, out. In, out. Here I'm just focusing on the Kasina visually and the breath. In, out. I've also designed this so that you can kind of increase the range of the Kasina. You could make it quite small. In, out. So small it goes out of existence. In, out. This is helpful because sometimes when you're focusing on a visual object, you actually want it to be a certain size. It's like it feels better when it's either smaller or bigger. You can imagine here, actually, if you went and brought it to 100%, you're actually in the Kasina. In, out. In, out. This mimics visually the experience of meditative absorption because you're entering into the object, you're merging with the object. This is the idea of concentration or jhana practice. So, just a quick example of the breath Kasina, how it works. Different colors here. You can notice the background is a darker red. The idea here is to get absorbed in the redness of the Kasina, as well as the breathing. In, out. I can tell you, gets pretty trippy after 10 minutes. I would describe this as a technodelic because of that. Custom. Let's do a custom color. How about something nice and dark? Yeah. So you can imagine if there's a certain color you really vibe with, you could use this. Okay. Pretty simple.